Hey man, very exciting to be on
Hey,
the other
Frank.
side of AI in the lab 2025. I think
That's
we're
right.
all
We
a
made
little
it.
bit smarter.
We survived.
We survived.
We
A
said,
lot of buzz. I mean, we were there last year and it already felt buzzy, but I think that it feels noisier. But maybe it's because it's
I
the way
mean,
our social media
almost
feeds.
double the amount of people, right? Almost double the amount of people. I mean, I heard that they could have gotten even more if they had secured another location. So I fully expect now, with a year ahead, and that in hindsight, they're gonna, you know, I think we could see 2,000 to 3,000 people next year easily. Yeah. And given that the buzz will be way bigger next year,
The SoFi Stadium, that's where we're going to be.
I mean, you don't have enough rooms in there, right? So SoFi
Yeah, that's
Stadium.
right. With the
But I, but
compute
I, but
miners.
I think, given the direction of AI and the progress that AI is making, I mean, it's not. It would not surprise me to have 2,000 to 3,000 people. I still think we're in a bubble, but I think that it's just a bubble that's being ignored. You know, but I think
You're being
that
ignored. Ignored by who?
it's a good question. Ignored by people who are ostriches, as you have described. I think there are plenty of people that are not paying attention to that, because I mean, here I'm in Atlanta and some people are telling me here that they're not AI is not even on their radar because they are just fighting, the fire of where's the next job. Like that is way more pressing to the production folks and development folks, that hey, where's the money coming from next? Like, where our job, are we just going to lose our jobs? Do we have to leave this industry? Is a more pressing issue than, do I have time to figure out this AI thing?
It's
Right.
so interesting because, like, I think the last however many years of just media and culture, just because everything is just driven by once cable news and now social media news, everything's hyperbole all the time. So we live in an age of hyperbole, but in a messed up way, like this feels like among the handful of topics that the hyperbole is warranted in terms of how people should take it seriously. And I guess that's all I ever say when I do consults and stuff is like, I don't know if I'm selling anybody anything or if I'm encouraging them to do anything, but I do encourage them to pay attention and take it seriously. That there's something shifting, and not to get too down the workforce sort of conversation, but to your point about people worried about jobs, like that Anthropic goal, or I guess that comment from the Anthropic CEO last week about 50% of like entry level white collar jobs stand to be cut. It's an interesting comment from somebody supposedly like pushing out a product. And I guess I'm just wondering, maybe it was an earnest kind of just thinking about the impact of the technology, or it certainly doesn't sound like a selling point, or at least something that garners praise. I don't know. I do feel like paying attention is super important right now. I think I try to be more optimistic that those are all estimates based on today's ecosystem and today's railroads, whereas with any patterns from the past, we're building new railroads that hopefully build new ecosystems where those types of perspectives are in an old paradigm versus a new paradigm. Hard not to, I mean, look, I'm myself someone on a journey, as a lot of us are. So. But I guess like what I wanted to ask you about today, learn to think about music as sort of maybe a reference point, and maybe it's just a starting point to talking today. But like, I think so much of what the entertainment film TV industry is going through, it feels like the music industry went through some version of this in a big way with Napster, 20 plus years ago, with its aggressive digitization. That I think it went from an analog-ish industry, even compact discs were still these physical things we consumed and interacted with, and then went through everything that came with MP3s. I have a lot of wondering about what can we learn about the legal copyright battles that came out of that, but also like the consumer experience. And ultimately, the consumer experience is being our baseline of why there's an industry still to sort of interact with and to participate in as an artist. What do you think about sort of that sort of, I don't know if it's an analogy, but is there a learning from the past that we're starting to see patterns emerge? Do you ever think that way?
What do you mean, like if I look like at Web3 or NFTs or things like that, or
Specifically, like what the MP3 did to music is the AI film doing to a product, an experience that normally has so much resource intensivity. We talk about this a lot, that like, making a film now can be iterated and prototyped very quickly, in a way that just wasn't part of the process, with making films ever. In fact, that's the whole industry surrounding it, is that there's so many bets took place along the way to building this huge scale thing that then turns into a 2-hour experience or TV show. I think about music as like, here's something that used to have all these moving parts but got so slippery and fast in terms of how MP3s can be distributed and consumed and interacted with. Maybe I'm alone on this, by the way. I've been noticing a new crop of filmmakers. I was just at a film at the IMAX headquarters, actually a couple blocks away from my house. There's a short film by a filmmaker called Alex Pabarcius, if I'm pronouncing his name. Just a young filmmaker, just the kind of person that. Sorry.
I said that's a unique name.
He's a cool guy. No, and it came through my friend Zach, who works there, that is friends with Alex, and I think Alex might work in the building as well. I don't know. I'm much older. It's exciting to be around young people that are getting excited about being filmmakers. And it was interesting to me hear them talk. First of all, it's a very out of this world kind of wild film. It has AI components, this sort of experience that he was filming in China in Shenzhen 6 years ago, and then COVID slowed it down, and then he sort of finally finished it. So kudos to a filmmaker finishing his film. But he eventually started adopting AI techniques towards the end, because as he finished his film, it landed there. But long and short of it is, him and his partner spent a lot of time talking about how, to them, what interests them about films in the near future is the way they become an intersection of like music performance culture and filmmaking. And I just find it interesting that it's possible we're drawing from how music has evolved as an artifact to where film may want to go. It's something that feels more live, feels more visceral, something more, unique and in the moment as far as performances go, or perhaps even the way it's something that connects with its listeners in that much more decentralized way. I think music isn't what it used to be. It isn't just like monolithic pop stars. It's something that, lives in more sort of playlist environments. I don't know. I feel like I'm throwing a lot on the table.
What's interesting, well, I see two threads worth pulling on. I think it's interesting that Napster caused this, it caused Metallica to respond accordingly. And it was seen as such an evil thing, and bootlegging. And of course, the federal government got involved, suing people, fining people, millions of dollars, etc. But obviously the users, and I still feel like the Napster user experience is superior to still a lot of user experiences that I experienced with media. It was like, search for it, download it, now I have it, and I can keep listening to it. Obviously streaming is so easy now because I don't have to have it on my computer, but it disrupted everything in terms of how I get my music and my just media in general. And then 10 years later, or however long that took for iTunes to finally arrive, and then Spotify, and then Apple Music, I feel like, do we look at AI as a bootlegging type thing, where are you bootlegging the art of everybody, right? Are you bootlegging the art of humanity to create anything? And is that gonna, like, 5 to 10 years from now, are we gonna have a similar kind of iTunes like moment? Like, if this is the Napster moment now, is there an iTunes like moment? I don't think so, because we're in completely different territory, for sure. But it is kind of an interesting analogy. And then I think, in the parallel to what you're talking about with like events and musical concerts and things like that, and which is where a lot of musicians make money. Actually, they don't make money on Spotify and Apple Music. They make maybe a little bit, but relative to the influence that you get from Spotify, you're not getting much in terms of revenue from Spotify. I wonder if, we are gonna see a scenario where, hey, the digital world and digital narratives and everything immersive, XR, TV, movie, short form content is all going to be heavily, we're going to see AI everywhere, right? It's just going to be so easy to create all of those types of content with AI, such that the IRL experiences will become more valuable, that the touch grass moments will become more like tangible, more valuable to individuals, even though at the same time, the value of things, or the complexity, or the engagement of things digitally is going to be also better. It's going to be way more engaging and interesting and exciting than it is now, which is hard to imagine. Like if like right now the internet is very engaging. What does it look like if the internet became 10x more engaging, but at the same time bewildering and untrustworthy, and therefore I have to go meet you in person, or
Well, it's like I always remind myself that the avatar of this kind of creator economy moment for many is Mr. Beast, and I think it's a public knowledge that he actually loses money on content in terms of P&L, just money coming in, money coming out, because the real business is everything that he does with that media empire that he's built and how that reaches people and how that creates a marketing for many. And to your point, musicians, make more money, in their other ways besides recording records. And I think, again, that keeps bringing me back to the Napster moment, is that I think the Napster moment was this, I think, analogous kind of dam breaking that a very stable, repeatable model of monetization that did sort of benefit everybody in that ecosystem, and artists included. When, again, if you're old enough to remember, a compact disc, which was sort of a crappy version of digital music compared to the MP3, would cost like $18. And I think it literally cost 25 cents to even produce. It was just a, super bloated, really taking advantage of the consumer business model back then. And that funded a lot of people. That probably made a lot of people very rich. I think music videos were awesome back then because they were just this like, super well-funded sub-industry. I think a lot of people made their names back then in the 90s. But then once that technological shift happens, that sort of monetization model collapsed. I think the music industry, I remember saying, I think it's rebounded, but I think it literally got cut in half. Like literally, just talk about, when we talk about Anthropic saying 50% of entry level white collar jobs. Here's another moment that some people are alive long enough to remember. Half of the music industry disappeared in some measurable amount of time. But then let's bring it back to the artist. Let's assume that might be all the business and the industry of the music industry versus the creative process that people so emotionally connect with. That still became subpar. I think I'm not as deep in the music space, but I think I hear pretty regularly it's not that great to be a musician. It's fine
brutal.
at best. It might even be brutal. I get, but let's just say that it isn't like MP3s made it being a musician better. But in that sort of world where people still want to make music, people still have to make music, people still have to consume it. It's just a part of life that people love music. How has that found a livelihood? Yeah, it's become a space that then the distribution of the thing, the music, is still a platform to build something else, to build experiences, concerts, relationships, events, which I think is what you're pointing out too. Like, is that an analogy of what might be coming? Like, is the film the beginning of a business as opposed to the final product, which is kind of what happened to music?
I think so, and but I think, like, to your point, I think, like, is there like a diversification of like what I offer coming, right? Like, I am a musician, therefore I also am going to build out a world, which, by the way, is is a deja vu of what happened in Web3, right? Where like you and I literally worked with musicians to try to help them build out characters and worlds that they would launch with NFTs, right? That literally happened like 3 or 4 years ago. And AI is inviting everybody to once again do something like that, but actually have the tools to do that, but not the monetization tools to do that. But you can, like in the Web3 era, NFTs was like, hey, we're gonna sell you this ticket or this item, or this digital item, so that we're gonna invite you to this world later. And AI is saying, hey, we can build this entire world now. It could even be a shitty world, but you can build it all now. We don't have a ticket for this. In fact, we're going to spend way too much money building this thing. It's kind of inverted. It's kind of ironic.
Well, I mean, I think some people are optimistic that those experiments, again, I think for people that didn't dive into the amazingness of the 2021, 2022 Web3 explosion, and perhaps are rightfully distracted by all the weird, funny monkeys. The things that we were looking at were these early questions being asked, like, is the creator economy, ripe for reinvention? Are there different ways to take advantage of these trends that were happening? Fans were a real part of the ecosystem, not just a consumer. Like they were something that was contributing back, something that was ripe for participation. And all these really interesting experiments were emerging through tokenization, blockchain stuff, which starts to numb some people's brains as I even say it. But like that was the experiment that I think you and I were drawn to. It's like, is there a community economy? People used to, sort of throw into their white papers. And I do think that starts to point to the thing that might have been in the lab that now I wonder if that's something that is available to look at as I think a lot of creators are jumping in. I think a lot of people are realizing that their dreams are available to put out there. That kind of gate crashing moment that at Napster did, where the business of music seems to be happening to the creative business of filmmaking, that a lot of people are saying, but there's a lot of chaos that ensued after Napster. There's a lot of power structures and battles that emerged, and we can almost look at the way those ended. But I mean, minimally, there's a chaos that ensues after. I don't know if it's as simple as an analogy of like then 50% people, to repeat that part of the Napster story or the MP3 story. But it does sort of start to open opportunities for things like you're pointing at, of like, do the ideas of Web3 or even the actual technologies of Web3 inserting new economic structures become worth looking at? I mean, this could easily go into abstraction, I think, as we're introducing it, but is there like a specific one that you're looking at, or an anecdote that somebody you've seen try it?
Well, I like, I don't know if this answers your question at all, but I like the metaphor of music, because music right now, if you were to ask like the old heads of music, like I wonder what they would say if you asked them, like, is it better now than it was before, like pre Napster? Like if you looked at Napster, was what, the late 90s, 2000?
1999, 2000.
Yeah. So like pre-Napster music industry versus today's industry. I mean, the one thing I know is that there are probably more people than ever in music, probably, who are making a buck, not necessarily $100,000, but a buck in music. But also it's more crowded, probably harder to get to a Taylor Swift level. I'm unclear if, I don't know. But then again, like music, probably, the starving artist trope, right? It's probably always been hard to make it to some extent, right? Like, like I see every other day someone's in a coffee shop in an open mic trying to make it, right? Like I'm in Atlanta, and like literally I went to a brewery last night, and there was like a small wrestling league. It was like 300, 200 people in the audience. It was like a wrestling league. These guys, and my friend was like, I wonder if this is where the rock kind of started, is like in these tiny, the brewery hired this wrestling league to come by with their radio station to do a funny thing, you know, and it's just as fake as it is on television, maybe less professional, but it was awesome. And like, but obviously these people aren't making as much money, are much more money than the musicians playing in an open mic, right? Like everybody starts somewhere. There's this cottage industry, but
Well, I think that goes to a question of discovery. I mean, I think when we say making it, like it's all in this kind of like Hollywood dream of like, if I put myself out there, if I'm waiting tables at the right restaurant, if I knock on enough doors, or if I put out enough headshots and scatter them around the city, does somebody find me and discover me? I mean, that's the word, discovery. Our friend Adrian Lehen's kind of published that awesome Substack this last weekend. That I won't even pretend to synopsize. I think maybe we link to it here, but it just really blasts open sort of what the new playing field looks like, and all the things that are more than experiments. These are existing creator economy businesses that are available pre-AI, during AI, and are the types of structures that, to bring it back to discovery and making it, like this is now the model. Like it isn't just I hope somebody finds me and realizes how talented I am, and then they will pluck me from my obscurity and drop me inside of this farm machine equals success. Now it's like, no, like, am I actually really good at sales? And then I'm actually going to follow all these very beaten paths of being an affiliate marketer. Am I actually someone that rapid iterates IP on YouTube and creates storytelling that then becomes like a really quick way for IP to be sort of experimented with to become a movie or TV show. So I think that discovery moment is really interesting. But I think to bring it back to the music meme is like, there's this idea that now everybody just gets to, I think, perform and be out there. I think like the act of performance is something that interests me a lot, as we're also like emotionally reactive to the what is artificial content do to real performance and the things that I think people like to say is what is meaningful to them. And in some ways, it places greater value on that product that comes after the song that then someone needs to see performed live, or the experience that comes perhaps after the film you made that is the growing value of the IP to its community. I mean, we're throwing a lot of things around here, but I think this is the most interesting unanswered question: is this decentralization moment, is this sort of noisy technology opportunity? I think there's enough people that are already past the point is the best thing it can do is just make things cheaper and faster. Is the best thing it can do is just make the things we've already loved. It's like, does it do something new? And that's why I find it interesting that young people and some of the most innovative people we look at are sometimes, I'm not saying always, I just hear it and maybe it's selective, sometimes referencing music. Like we saw that Brian Eno documentary together. For people that haven't seen it, Gary Hustowit directed this really unusual film that every single time you see it, it regenerates as a new movie. And it's very complicated technology. But the point is that he got inspired to make a movie that way because he went to a concert and he saw a band play. And he's like, wait, this feeling I have when I'm at a performance, that I'm here right now and I'm me in this audience, this is like, can movies do that? And up until recently, you couldn't even ask that question and get an answer because no, they couldn't. You know, it takes too long to make a movie. Maybe theater can do that, but that's not the question he was asking. So I think that's what's interesting to me is that some of the newest experiments might be calling on what we've all come to sort of live with, the growing love of music and performance and people that do have livelihoods in that space.
Well, I mean, the Gary Hustowit's film is funny because of also because the screening at AI in the Lot featured the Pickford AI thing, which is hard to describe, but basically they allowed the audience to fill in the dialogue of like a date, I guess, of like two people having a date. And then the audience wrote in dialogue, like the guy would say like, hey, you know, I'm really cool and all, but you should know one thing about me, right? And then everybody could fill in. And then from there, everybody could vote on what was their favorite thing. And then that was immediately put into the dialogue of the actual film that everybody then watched to like great aplomb, and a lot of people had a lot of fun, and they said it was like, it felt like stand-up comedy. A lot of people said it felt like comedy to them, like they were watching a stand-up comedian. And they could also see who wrote what, right? So like our friend Jagger wrote, you know, like he's like, you know, like the guy's like, oh, there's one thing you should know about me. I have testicular cancer, you know? And so like, and of course she got like 10, 20 upvotes or whatever. And then in the end, in the credits, they immediately generated who had submitted, like, and then added them almost like as writer credits. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it was, that this was an experience that only that audience could have, that we were there, we created that thing together. It was a cinematic experience. We watched something together that we created on the spot, and we will never be able to share that ever again. And it kind of
and I love that, and I need to spend more time with Pickford because I think that goes to like, is it possible that the most interesting things, or some of the interesting things that are emerging because of the speed of this technology, because of its ability to move through resources differently in a way that you don't just say, well, that's not possible because it takes 9 months to make a movie or whatever the numbers in somebody's head. Does that suddenly make new experiences that are actually what we want to do in a theater together differently? And again, whether it's the stand-up comedy where the heckler kind of changes the comedian's routine, or like the way a crowd can tell the band before they do their last encore, play this song, you know, or I always think about like the Freddie Mercury, like Live Aid, Live Aid where he, hey, oh, and he's like talking back and forth with the crowd. Like that's what it feels like to experience something together, and it's less passive, and that's why I love that example too, that there's something newly available in what music has always more easily had available. Like it was easier just to get on a stage and perform. Is now are we starting to get to play with those types of opportunities with filmmaking?
I think you're right. I think I genuinely think that we are in the first phase of, and this is not at all like Napster, right? This is a whole other thing where it's like this is like SpaceX rocket ships and stuff. Like this is where the rocket ships cause things the relandable rocket ships cause things to be so cheap that you can create other things on top of that cheapness and that fastness. So like I do like we are living in the bubble of AI is going to change film and TV when it is going to change every layer of experience in general because like I think we've both played with Odyssey.world and it's like it can generate video, very shitty video live immediately.
Yeah, but that capability is like
Yeah, that's going
ding,
to prove.
ding, ding.
And in
Yeah.
fact, you could. I was thinking today, like you could run Odyssey.world that video generation through real time canvas and immediately upscale it live, right? Through Leonardo or Kriya's real time canvas. So like we're not far away. They're not probably far away from like having it generate immediately more quality, running it through some type of style filter. But anyway, like I think we're in a land where the speed of something is moving so fast that it completely changes your relationship
So what's
with the media.
possible?
Yeah,
And I think, I think in general, what I don't think people say often enough in our spaces is the film and TV that we sort of idolize, it is a mass media. It isn't
right.
just media, meaning that its unique characteristic is that it reaches sometimes millions of people, sometimes live. And I think the product that we end up responding to is usually the result of many experiments and many things. And I think we're in this phase now that as much as we're so giddy about what's possible of us by ourselves in our laptops at home making stuff, what starts to get me more excited is when we're starting to put things in front of people, not just how many clicks they get on YouTube, but I wonder about these live experiences, these sort of moments when we're actually seeing, direct interaction. I don't know, maybe that's just me being more into like what happens when we're all together and, the human experience of being in a theater versus the passive consumption of Netflix. I think is a real thing. Like Netflix has kind of taught us that maybe people don't want to be together. I mean, Ted Sarandos seems perfectly gleeful to say that the movie industry doesn't, respond to the modern age. I think that's kind of a bummer, and it might be true. But I think if it's not true, it's because we do like doing things together again. We do like being in a setting live. And if that's true, it's because I think new things are being created, not just the old things being made more pretty or more cheaply. I mean, I think the other thing that music sometimes teaches me is just how, I don't know, the experience of music is inherently wildly removed from the performance of it being produced sometimes. Most of us listen to music pre-recorded, meaning that we're not as stuck on, I need to hear that with a finger strumming a guitar right now. And I don't know, I guess as I bring that up, like, I think there's something about the way, especially people that love electronic music or people that love sort of, more modernly produced music than even using instruments. The synthetic art of most music is widely adopted. And I think right now, a lot of things that are most painful to people watching AI come to filmmaking is the synthetic adoption of things that
Are
we
you
got used to being really human. Like that's an actual actor versus a synthetic actor.
Are you
So I
talking
think
about
there's
like
something.
EDM? Are you talking about like EDM? Like when you
I
say
mean,
synthetic music, are you talking about like electronic
I'd like
synthetic?
a very specific category, but I'd say pretty much
Right,
most things we listen to aren't real anyway. They're all produced by machines. Timbaland very
right.
famously
It's
mostly
passing
sits in a
through.
studio with machines. He's not surrounded by artists and musicians. Even our favorite producers are mostly using machines to make music. So I guess I'm
Right,
saying music
right.
has already gone through this arc that, many years ago it was a room full of violinists. There were all these humans that were very uniquely valuable in their execution of making something we loved called music. We've had these film sets with hundreds of people on them that make these unique, beautiful things we call movies. And right now, there's a lot of pain surrounding the possible things on is that the only way to do it, or is that a way that all those people remain? I just bring this up because I think music again is another place that we've all evolved with it. And I also like going to a live performance. I also really value learning somebody who's really good at playing a guitar. But I think there's a lot of room for everything that's come from the fact that we got used to the fact that the experience of music may not require all the humans that it used to. And I don't know if that's thing to learn from as we have those feelings around film. That's another thing that I'm wondering.
Well, it's interesting because when I think about DJs and like mastering being a whole other thing, but there is a whole ecosystem and world of tools for music that are very, very tactile, right? Even including like the turntable, and yes, that is a synthetic going through speaker. Like you just wouldn't, it just that would not have happened without electricity, right? As opposed to an acoustic guitar, which of course is being recorded by electric equipment, but whatever. Let's put that aside. But like so, but I guess one thing that I've thought about is the spectrum of of art, being that the spectrum of art creation on one side being surprise, and on the other side being like exactly what you imagined. Like so like right now I go into Midjourney, I prompt, and you could even assign percentages to it. It's like 60% what I thought, what I had in my head, right? And that 60, but maybe it's 40% just chaos and hallucination that I didn't know that I wanted or whatever. And so that's why I get into a flow state with Midjourney, because I'm always kind of chasing this thing that I thought I wanted or that I didn't know I wanted, and so there's this thing. But whereas when I'm playing my violin, for example, like I imagine a series, a melody, and I play it immediately because I'm good at violin, and that's like, and there's a immediacy from my brain out into the universe, right? Versus an AI, when I'm playing with AI, it's so random a lot of the times, and is the uncomfortability, the uncanny valley, the uncomfortability, and all of that people feel when they watch synthetic media today in 2025, because of this like this lack of immediacy, right? I don't know. I might be going a little too abstract, but
No, I love this. I think this is an interesting direction.
yeah. So like, what if I am in a physical environment with 300 people in the audience, and I'm using Midjourney or whatever AI, and because it is almost more close to what I have in my head going out into a screen or to audio or to whatever, the audience is going to feel less uncanny valley. Like, is the audience going to feel less like, oh, there's an AI intermediary here, and rather that the AI is just exacting my vision, and therefore it's okay. Like right now, we're like, because a lot of the protests that I hear from people who don't understand AI, to be fair, right? They just don't understand what's going on. They don't understand that humans are a big part of what's happening right now. A lot of my friends who are anti-AI are kind of like just pushing a button and an AI is going to be human. Well, AI can never be human, blah, blah, blah. That's the protest, right? But that's because in a lot of ways, most of these AI tools are just not like, they're hallucinating too much, I guess. You know what I mean? And so like, so on one side, there's the journey of making the AI more and more closer to what we think we want to have. And then on the other side, I have met AI artists who are like kind of sad that that era is coming, because they like this moment where you have to think creatively around the restraints, that you can lean into hallucination, because the hallucination is an indication of the AI being itself creative to some extent. So like,
I mean, I think it's interesting that I think outside of this AI moment, I don't know, maybe I'm cherry picking my themes here, but like, I think some people have noticed that the Hollywood machine minimally got very risk averse on the other side of the streaming bubble. It sort of didn't have that energy that some people really enjoyed about like the independent film kind of era of the late 90s, early 2000s. And, like there's something that started to calcify around certain genres, there's certain expectations, certain ways you're supposed to make this type of movie. And then there's like highly skilled technicians that are like, it got into a place of just delivery and efficiency, which I don't know if those are the types of words we associate with like the creative experience, but it is sort of the creative industry that most of us, distract ourselves and we just want to watch something on TV or swipe on our phone. But what, again, I come back to music, that I think music has become so personalized in terms of everybody's playlist and everybody, but also just like the live performance piece, like there's still a place in the world for free jazz. Like somebody's really into that, when you go to that performance, not only is it different every time, it's inherently like all over the place, and that's what the consumer of that segment of being a music lover gets to get in a real raw way. And I hope slop becomes an art form, and I think there's almost like the free jazz lover that. And a lot of those free jazz people were on a lot of drugs, if I recall the story correctly. They showed up for it and they participated. I just mean like that side of the hallucination, that side of the like randomness. There's an art experience we can refer to that still has a real consumer. Um, I really think a lot of the emotional reactions are coming from people in the industry. It really feels like this constant refrain of it's coming after me. But again, if we go to just the experience of art, the consumer experience that ultimately creates value and creates businesses for us, I feel I don't worry about there being delight and excitement coming. Hearing what Pickford's playing with, seeing what people are suddenly capable of doing with a live act or the range of distribution of things like what Gary Hunt said, even though that's not AI technically, but it's something like AI. I don't know. I feel like this is where the speed that music gets produced has shown us what's possible when we digitize
it. And the different styles, right? That is inevitably the remixing, the combination, like all of that is just so exciting.
But like you listen to more music than me these days. Like, what do you see any emergent trends that are coming from today's creator economy? What do you? I'm almost trying to point at something. Is there something that we're going to start seeing converge with the way filmmaking gets made? Do you think live performances matter more than ever?
I mean, I think there's a post-pandemic element to that for sure, but I don't know. I definitely don't follow. Maybe we should ask our friend Afan, but like I don't follow music that closely. I mean, I do think there have been moments like Drake using Tupac and Snoop's voice, and I know that Spotify is apparently aggressively using AI to create more just background music that people listen to a lot, like lo-fi type jams. Yeah, so, but I don't know if we're necessarily seeing new genres. I know that at least some of the musicians that I've talked to, like they're kind of shy to admit, that they're using it or that they're using it for prototyping, but they're not necessarily using it in their actual music. And I also heard that, like Kanye, sorry to invoke him, but like
still genius artist.
Yeah,
handle.
Yeah, but he did release some music with AI and with AI voice, and then something like that, and then his audience kind of protested, so he removed it, and he was very public about that. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, Matt Zion's video where where he made that song,
the AI film, the film is lying film.
Yeah, the film is lying film. It's kind of interesting because he mentioned to us in our community call that people were going down deep rabbit holes just to find out which shot was AI or not. And I feel like there will maybe always be that like Reddit community who's always going to be hunting for whoever their the biggest fans are even going to be hunting for whether or not their favorite artist is using AI in their production process. So there's something about all of these moments that I'm mentioning that is amounting to almost like an AI counterculture that is probably always going to be there, and probably it's good that it's there, right? It's good that because we are going to be living in a world where AI is everywhere, so maybe it's good that there's going to be this army of humans who are always going to be like, oh, I don't like that there's AI in that, and that's going to create its own backlash, and I think it's good. I think it's healthy because it's going to be harder and harder to know what is real online, and we're going to have to come up with ways besides blue checks and famous people saying that they did or did not do this, right?
The trust economy, I think it's another meme in all this. What is trust anymore, and what is it pointing to? I guess like as I think about all these examples, I think the big assumption is that content is increasingly participatory, or at least it can be. I don't know. Sometimes people get excited about interactive, immersive, and then people are reminded that most people are very passive consumers, and they just kind of want to zombie out and veg out on content. But comment threads, the sort of the the sort of the free marketing that comes with super fans. Like there's definitely a growing thing to play with, and I guess I want to learn from the way fans bark out to performers on stage and the way that artists interact with their fans, on socials. How does that, as musicians, does that point to a world that is coming with storytelling visually? Especially when you look at a Odyssey system, these are instantly, rapidly generatable content experiences. Like the railroads are there. It's just what do we do with them?
We just close our eyes and just fall into the abyss. I
The
mean,
act of surrender.
there's an element of it. There's an element of that probably will happen en masse. But I'm hoping that it becomes so like I tweeted this earlier this morning. I was just like, I wonder if the future is less stealing and copying and reposting, because it's going to be cheap, so cheap, maybe even more cheap to create your own thing than it is to take from somebody else. Maybe the reposting and copying and stealing still happens, but it is going to be so cheap for me to create something that is me and mine and then post it. Right now, it is so easy to post. It's just people have an anxiety about whether or not what they post represents them, or whether it's good enough, or how people perceive them, blah blah blah. But the ability to post, to click a button, is zero, right? Like the cost is near zero, and to the individual, it's certainly zero out of their checkbook, relatively speaking. But now the act of creating a 5-second or 30-second short film based on a vision that you had in your brain, just like the way that I play the violin. When I think do 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 do, and then I can play that do 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 on my violin, that might become what video and image and story becomes, where I just think of a story and then boom, it's in video form in 30 seconds or a minute, and then I can just post that. Like, I think that's coming very fast.
That's the
And
capability, and that becomes the new
yeah,
currency. What becomes the mass media hit experience in a world
I don't
where
know.
that
Is it
is,
is it
and
is it
that's the fun of the
maybe it's
moment, I
meme?
think.
Maybe it's meme, right? To your,
100%.
maybe meme is interactive, and maybe instead of I'm reposting a meme, maybe I'm just creating a meme that responds to your meme, and we're in this weird, post meme economy that is like something else entirely, right?
And just to kind of, I know that I've pushed part of this music thing, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. But I want to try one last like throwback. Like I don't want to undermine the whole lively debate around copyright and the laws and the legal disputes. But just to sort of boil it back to art and creativity, like I think about like blues musicians who maybe like, especially given all the racial inequality and the civil rights that would come after, maybe there should have been copyright attorneys protecting Robert Johnson and everybody back then. And perhaps that's its own thought experiment. But if we just take it for what it is this movement of music that, as far as I can tell, I'm no musicologist, but I'm pretty sure all of those musicians were constantly shown up to each other's shows, listen to each other's riffs. I think there might even be like a handful of riffs that are the core blues riffs. And something really amazing happened when just a bunch of artists just kept borrowing from each other and working. And you might even call those memes, the way that like some like a set of chords became a thing that just brought joy when the familiarity came back. And when you saw somebody riff on it, it became like something that made them because they took their take on what Robert Johnson and arguably rock and roll came from that. R&B came from that. Many entire businesses, the music industry we're referring to in a lot of ways is born off of that type of soup of creativity. If we're sort of playing with the idea, like is visual storytelling, filmmaking, storytelling with images, getting into the speed of memes, into the speed of something that can be interacted with and commented on, I wonder if something amazing's on the other side of this. What if we let that be in a way, and maybe that's where like the non-commercial applications for people that are just doing this for fun on the internet, as opposed to people that are trying to sell movie tickets and make movies or TV shows. I don't know. That inspires me too. That I think that's what strumming a guitar was capable of. You could kind of just try it and change your mind a bunch of times. I think we now get to do that with making a little movie. And then if somebody comes up with a visual meme, then maybe everybody just starts running with it and we all explore where else that goes. That seems to be what the internet's doing right now.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. I mean, I hope I have that hopeful future, and I want there to be a world in which there is more empathy, and I hope that making storytelling and communicating and memeing easier causes there to be more empathy in the world, because hey, I can finally express myself in a different, like 20 different medium and
Or it
form.
creates connection.
Yeah, well, I mean, empathy to me is also connection.
No,
But I mean,
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying it goes in both directions. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess what I'm thinking is that, hey, look, like if I can communicate to you in 20 different ways, or you can reprocess what, like it's not just that I can tell a story in all the ways that I want them to be told. You can also take my story and reprocess it for you the way that you want to hear it. And like, what does that mean in both directions? And that, hey, like maybe I always imagine, like, what is the couples therapy version of where AI like inserts itself into this? Like couples have a hard time understanding, like sometimes where their values are hitting up against each other, or what like sometimes one spouse is complaining about one certain thing, and it's taken them years to communicate what that thing really reflects internally for them. So like I wonder, what does that look like between couples, between parents, between parents and kids, and grandparents, and generationally, like all that kind of stuff. Anyway,
Lots to still wonder about, which I think is what keeps this interesting. Well, I'm glad we're doing these again where you get to ramble and discover other thoughts of each other's ideas. We don't do it enough. I hope people got through our conversation today. Maybe the editor helped us.
yeah.
But excited to see you this week in New York.
Awesome, man. See you soon. Thanks everybody for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe, or don't do that. Don't do what you don't.
Or unsubscribe.
Yeah, or unsubscribe. Yeah, you could do that too.
You're welcome to all of it.